Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and in the latter half of March I read 7 books. I'm going to get 3 of them out of the way by talking about the full trilogy that I read in March, and that is the His Fair Assassin trilogy, starting with Grave Mercy and going on to the ones I listened to on audiobook, which are Dark Triumph and Mortal Heart. This series is about assassin nuns. And in case that doesn't interest you already, it is about these girls who go to the convent of the patron saint of death and become assassins because they have abilities that aid them in being able to kill people, and they were supposedly the actual daughters of the patron saint of death who they worship as a god. And so the back of this book has a blurb on it that really kind of shows what the vibe of this series is. A plot that nods to history while defying accuracy, and I think that's a really good description of it, because that is kind of what it's like. It's like historical fantasy, but it's not just the fantasy elements themselves that kind of show you that this didn't really happen. It's kind of just a lot of the setting in general, but at the same time it is really accurate at the same time, because it does focus a lot on some people who actually existed and all of that. So basically I thought that the first book barely had any like fantasy elements to it, but the second two, like, I feel like the series built on its fantasy elements more and more until the third one was a true historical fantasy. So each book follows a different main character who we're all introduced to in the first book, and I really loved following all 3 of them, but especially Sibella, who narrates the second book. I think she's my favorite. And basically, though, it's kind of weird because the third book is narrated by Aneth, who I didn't think, from our introduction to her in the first book, I did not think I'd like reading about her at all, but I actually thought that she was a really great character. Also, it was kind of funny because I would be like giving my brother-in-law a ride to work and listening to the second 2 books on audio, and he would get like so into it. Like, I was actually really surprised how much he enjoyed like listening to just random snippets of those books while I was giving him a ride. Yeah, that's how freaking good they are. Like, I did listen to 2 more audiobooks this month, the first of which is Front Lines by Michael Grant, and this is a book about if in World War II women were drafted. And so this follows basically the point of view of 3 different girls in alternating points of views who go and enlist, and basically they are all different ethnicities, which is super cool, because then it really provides some insight into what life was like for their different ethnicities back then. All of that. At first, I kind of thought that the one white chick was getting way more screen time than the other 2, but then towards the end, we get like 4 chapters that she's not in. So obviously she wasn't getting like all the screen time and all of that. So basically, though, I really enjoyed this book because I had just listened to like 2 audiobooks almost in a row, which you will know from previous wrap-ups, that were non-fiction accounts of women joining the army. And basically I thought that it was super cool to read a fictional account of such a thing, because like after having read those non-fiction ones, because then I could enjoy the story without going, oh my goodness, this is a true story. I loved how well researched this book was, because I mean, right down to the barest detail about where the soldiers eat is called the Chow Hall, and I only know that because I read Soldier Girls earlier this year, and so apparently Michael Grant knows what he's talking about. But I did have a couple of issues with this book, however, and one of them is just the fact that there's a weird, like, cheating subplot / love triangle in this, and I just didn't think that it had a place at all. I feel like YA books just have too much of that. Like, there will be just a cheating subplot where the fact that somebody cheats on somebody with someone else who they actually like more but aren't admitting it to themselves or whatever. Like, I don't think that that usually has a point. Like, there's not really a good place in the story for it. Like, it doesn't actually impact the story overall. So why is there a cheating subplot? So it just like bothered me. And then also I thought the pacing of this book was really, really odd, because the first like half of the book was just setting everything up and everything, and the second half of the book was all action. Like, all action. The next book that I listened to on audio was American Street by Ibi Zoboi, and this is about a girl named Fabiola who moves from Haiti to Detroit, Michigan to stay with her cousins. Two of them are twins and they're her age, and the other one is older, like a couple years older and in college, and basically on her way flying there, her mother actually gets detained and doesn't end up coming to Detroit with her, so she basically then has to navigate a completely different culture, even though she is with like family members who are like helping her out and all of that. But then a detective comes up to her and says, hey, so your cousin's boyfriend is a drug dealer and we're trying to bust him, and if you help us, we can get your mother out of the detention center and she can come into the United States. And so Fabiola goes, oh, that sounds like a no-brainer. I've got to do it and save my mother. But she's also dating the drug drug dealer guy's really good friend, and so just a bunch of shit goes down. So I loved the crap out of this book. There were moments in it that were just so suspenseful that my stomach was just rolling over with like, holy crap, this is insane and terrible. And just like, it's not a happy book at all. But I just loved reading it so much. Like, I highly recommend it. And the audiobook is so good. It's amazing how good the narrator is at doing all the different voices. And so I highly, highly recommend this book. I think it's the best one that I've read all year. So now on to the two last physical books that I read in the month of March. The first of which is Blue Tide by Jenna Lynn Duncan. And I really enjoyed this book. This was sent to me for review by Clean Teen. I still can't believe they really sent it to me. Thank you so much, Clean Teen, for sending me this. So I'm not going to go super into detail about what this is about, because I do have a full review of this, so I will leave that linked down below if you want to check it out and hear more of my thoughts. But basically, so this is a really good adventure-y pirate story that I just loved reading, but I did have a couple of big, like, problems with it. Mainly the fact that the two main characters are not actually given an ethnicity. So I was like really, really looking forward to reading a book with almost an entirely Middle Eastern cast. That is written by an author who, like, has a degree in Middle East studies and presumably spent time there and everything. But then, like, we have no clue the entire time where the characters are even from. They have no ethnicity. All we knew is that they speak Arabic, which only narrows it down to, like, 19 countries that are all still really different from each other. So I kind of wish that we got an actual ethnicity of the main characters. But anyway, the other thing that really bothered me about this book was that towards the end, in, like, the last third of the book, there's this really weird, like, Stockholm Syndrome-y plot point that was almost painful to read about. If you want more of my thoughts on this book, you should totally check out my review. And lastly, I read The Wizard of London by Mercedes Lackey. And this is one of the books in her companion series about elemental masters living in, like, Victorian London. So basically this one is a retelling of The Snow Queen, and I'm not that familiar with the tale of the Snow Queen. Like, I mean, I've read it and everything, but it's not like a super obvious one to me, like Little Red Riding Hood or anything like that. So so I don't really know how, like, loose or not this retelling really is. But it basically, iPod's tail is in the way, but it basically follows these two best friends named Sarah and Nan, and they are gifted with, like, weird psychic abilities, and then meanwhile there's this lady named Cordelia who is trying to switch bodies with a man so that she can, like, have more power in that society, because, like, life sucks when you're a woman in Victorian England, I guess. So basically, I don't think I liked this book as much as the other ones in this series, basically, mostly because we just follow too many different characters' point of views. Like, we get 5 point of view characters in this, and it's not a very long book. So I feel like the amount of character depth that we got was hardly any at all. And the ending felt really abrupt, and just a lot of it felt just too choppy, I felt like. I wish that we had gotten more of Cordelia and her like wanting to switch bodies with a man, because I think that was the most interesting plot point, and she was definitely the most interesting character in this. But there was just a lot that felt super underdeveloped, and I think that if this book had concentrated a little bit more on what was the most interesting, it would have been just a lot better. And then also, I didn't really like the fact that it involved a completely different magic system than what we've gotten thus far in the series. Like, suddenly we get characters who do magic that isn't the elemental kind that we have gotten in this series so far. So I just thought that was kind of weird, and it just made the story like even choppier, and it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. So anyway, those are the books that I read in the latter half of March. Let me know what you read this month, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye!